In Matthew 16, we see Christ speaking of the church in the singular, insisting it would never suffer defeat to the forces of evil. This begs the question, which church is Christ referring to? Obviously, this is a reference to the one single universal church. If there is no universal church, but only local churches, why did Christ speak of only one of them? Is he referring to the first church, the church at Jerusalem, as some local church-onlyists argue? Impossible. History shows the church at Jerusalem eventually apostatized. The gates of hell prevailed against it. Furthermore, the church at Jerusalem didn't even assemble together in one visible place, as the local church-only model requires. There were simply too many of them. In fact, Acts 2:31 records 3,000 new members being added in just one day. No, the Bible says in Acts 2:46 they met house to house in small groups, yet they were still considered the church. Was Christ speaking of the church in a generic, abstract sense, not speaking of any one particular church but to all in general? If so, he wouldn't have used the possessive pronoun my church. This limits the meaning to a specific church, so it must have been the universal church of which the local bodies are all representatives. Besides, he could have just said my churches if he meant to speak in the plural. Some concede the inescapable conclusion that Christ is obviously speaking of the universal church, but only in the future when we are all called up to meet the Lord and are then visibly assembled. But then this would render his promise that the gates of hell would not prevail completely irrelevant. The gates of hell won't even be around to threaten the church in eternity when Christ has made his enemies his footstool. This divorces the verse from its point and power, that Christ preserves us here and now.